I'm James Smith. You know, every sport has some type of statistical analysis to break down and better understand the outcome of the competition. Boxing has but one source, Compubox. Well, I know a little bit about Compubox, but boxing fans maybe don't know about the embryonic stages. How did Compubox come to fruition?
We started Compubox 28 years ago. It's been that long. We got the idea from a tennis program. I was working at a database. This is when portable computers first came out. They weren't laptops, they were called portable computers with floppy disk drives. And we were hired as boxing editors. The idea was to go to events, log in fighters' records and database all this information. But while we were there, we saw a tennis program that someone had come in with and measured all the shots in tennis, first serve, aces, and all the box score for tennis. And we're there and we're thinking we can possibly create a similar program for boxing. So we had the program written and tested it out and took it to HBO actually, because I had done some freelance work for HBO. I knew Ross Greenberg at the time. We did some testing on some fights, off-TV fights, to get the kinks out of the program. Recorded the fight. It was an MSG show back in New York. We recorded one of the shows, took it to Ross Greenberg at HBO. He looked at the program and liked what he saw, and pretty much that was it. We were in business.
Overall, from broadcast to the fighters to, and obviously we'll get into this, to the fans, over the years it's really been a great implementation for boxing.
Well, that's exactly it. Initially, when we first started out, we didn't know what we really had. We didn't know what a fighter throws, what the average fighter throws per round, how many jabs a fighter throws, what's the weight class average. These are all statistics that evolved over time. So eventually, maybe 5 years in, we started databasing the fights, the content, and then we were able to take it a step further, like you said. Oh, this guy only throws, he throws 50 punches a round, but only 20 are jabs, 30 are power shots. Or he's very accurate with the power shots, not with the jab. Or he's strictly a jabber. A guy like Malignaggi, for instance, relies heavy.
But you couldn't have done this without knowing boxing. I mean, somebody could have come up with technology and all that other stuff, but you would have to kind of have a knowledge of boxing to be able to take, the technology and all of it and blend it in. And I'm certain it's evolved over the years.
Oh, for sure. I loved boxing from the time I was 8 years old.
And you know the sport.
Well, I never fought, but I know the sport. I love the sport. I've obviously followed fighters. I studied the history of the game. So when we first presented it to HBO, there was like no doubt in my mind that it was going to work, because we had such a passion for boxing and such a passion for what we were doing. So, and having the knowledge and the love of the sport helped a lot. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you could, if they say garbage in, garbage out, you could have the best program in the world, but if you don't know what you're looking at, what you're counting, it's just not going to work.
What do you need to do this correctly? I think number one, you need a knowledge of boxing. You need to know exactly, what a punch is, what a connect is, or what a miss is, and you need a tremendous amount of concentration. I mean, we've had people who are very knowledgeable about boxing, but they just haven't been able to maintain that concentration level for 3 minutes. It's difficult. And when you're talking about nights when we're doing, 4 12-rounders and possibly 48 rounds, that's a lot of concentration. And I think that's the key thing, that the ability to concentrate, not lose your focus when there are so many things happening around you.
You have to have good reflexes too, because sometimes guys like Leo Santa Cruz, for example, who throws 90, 100, 110 punches around, you've got to be able to keep up with him. And so you've got to be able to react to what you see and move on to the next punch. So you have to have concentration, you have to have focus. Doing punch counts is like learning how to type. You move your finger a certain way to record a certain letter. And in punch counting, you move your finger to hit a certain button when you see it. And after so long, it becomes second nature, and you just react to what you see. So it's reaction, it's concentration, it's focus, it's knowledge, it's a whole plethora of things that all have to roll together.
We look for somebody that's had, obviously, a passion for boxing, someone like a Lee Groves, Joe Carnicelli, another guy, Dennis Allen, who's a former fighter. Saul Avalar is another guy that works for me, was a former fighter. Joe Carnicelli was a UPI sports editor, was at ringside for big fights going back, back to the late 70s. Lee, eats, sleeps, drinks boxing, just a great guy. So it's somebody that has a passion for the sport, or as well as somebody who's been in the ring, which is even a bonus. If I could find a guy who loves the sport and also has been in the ring, that's a win-win. Gennaro Hernandez, the late Gennaro Hernandez, was another guy that worked for us who was just a great guy. So that's what I'm looking for.
Basically, there are two operators. Each one of us takes one fighter. I'll handle, for instance, a blue corner, and Lee will handle a red corner fighter. We count, it's basically a four-key operation. Jabs thrown and jabs landed. Power punches thrown and power punches landed. We also have an alternate one for power body punches. A jab is anything that attempts to hit the other fighter. I mean, a lot of times you get some of these, nervous types who stand around like this. We don't count those as jabs. He has to try to hit the other fighter. A power punch is anything other than a jab. Basically, we calculate the numbers in the round, numbers thrown, numbers landed, and the percentage. We also calculate cumulatively as the fight goes along. So at the end of the fight, you'll have the punches thrown in the round, that last round, as well as the punches thrown in every round, cumulative punches. We also have to break it down by minutes. How many punches were thrown per minute? If you see some fighter whose effectiveness wanes in the final minute, or some fighters basically save everything for the final minute. So we can break it down by minute. We also can break it down by average thrown per round. And we also can match that to a chart that we keep for each weight division on punches thrown per round. By that, for instance, if the punches thrown per round for a lightweight is such and such, and punches landed is such and such, is this fighter close to that? Is he way above that? So we can reference that as well. It's another point of information for the viewer that he might not know.
So this is a round-by-round bout sheet that we use to record the statistics round by round. We use these sheets to spot the trends in a fight. Like if somebody outlands somebody 42-21 in the last 3 rounds. That's how we confirm that. And so in between the rounds, I look at the screen, I write down the numbers, boom, 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 and then boom, boom, boom. It takes about 20-25 seconds, and then if I see a trend, or if he asks about it, then this is what I refer to. And on the back of this clipboard is a rundown for Compubox weight class averages. And we have it for all 18 divisions. We have it broken down with punches landed and punches thrown. If a fighter exceeds the division average by a certain amount, we then can refer to that in our notes that we pass on to the broadcasters, saying that such and such threw 118 punches that round, and that's nearly double the division average. That's just a little bit of the nuanced information that we can provide for the broadcast and for the viewers.
The misconception too about how the program works. We're only watching one fighter each. That's the different way of watching a fight. I mean, I have to go home when I go to work a fight, and afterwards I'll reflect, and someone will say, "That was a great fight," and I say, "Yeah, but I only watched through my guys' fit gloves." So it's a unique way of watching the fight. I'm only watching my fighter.
Yeah, you can't score a fight like that.
You can't, and you're watching your fighter.
Right.
There's a misconception. We're not watching, but all the action. So that's probably an edge to the program. The fact that, like I said, we're only focused on one set of gloves.
And about 95% of the time, the judges bear out the final stats. If a guy is ahead by 50, 60 connects in a fight, it's very likely he is ahead on the scorecards, and it lines up with the decision that they eventually will see if the trend holds.
As far as what we do, we can count the aggression, we can count the effective punching, we can count the effective defense on what the other person is landing, and how great a defensive fighter Floyd Mayweather is. He has one of the highest defensive percentages in history. Basically, you can point it out numerically. So it's as far as effective aggression, it's the percentage you're landing. It's the percentage you're throwing, you're landing. I mean, we also keep a database of records. How does this fighter's numbers stack up against the numbers of through history? We've done this for over 25 years, and our database goes back and has all the top figures.
We've had opportunities to run fights on Roberto Duran and Alexis Arguello and Muhammad Ali during his prime, and that's a particularly interesting study. Muhammad Ali during his best days. It turns out that his opponents landed a higher percentage of their shots than you would think. George Chuvalo, for instance, in their first fight, George was landing a ton of body shots in the early rounds in that fight, and Ali was letting him hit him just to prove a point. But a landed punch is a landed punch, and the numbers added up. Even in the Doug Jones fight, Sonny Liston. Most people, when they're watching old Ali fights, are so mesmerized by the beauty that they see in Muhammad Ali that they don't really concentrate on what the other guy's doing. When I ran the numbers on the opponents, I was forced to look at what the opponents were doing. And the numbers showed they were doing a whole lot more business than we thought that they were. Ali won the fights, but he wasn't as pretty defensively as maybe we once had thought.
As far as our results, translating as to who won the fight, I think we did a study about 2 or 3 years ago that about 95% of the punches landed, whoever has the advantage in punches landed, wins the fight as far when it goes to a decision. And we also had numbers where anyone landing over 50% of his power punches over the length of a fight also is almost certain to win. So it's basically, it proves out.
I think the CompuBox numbers are a reflection of what the fans already see in the ring. If a guy throws a lot of power shots, the statistics will bear him out. We just add information as far as accuracy, numbers, trends, percentages, things like that sort of add to what the viewer already knows.
What are the future plans for CompuBox?
Well, right now we're working on a fantasy game. Boxing really doesn't have, there's pick'em games where you just can pick a winner. We're working on a game where we'll incorporate the statistics into the game. It's like a pick'em game, pick'em fantasy game. We're always trying to improve the product. If there's a way to possibly measure impact of a punch, we're always looking for new ideas that way. It's just an issue with gloves, trying to, get into the gloves, and there's so many different glove manufacturers out there. But we're always looking to try to improve the product, and really long term is just try to stay in the business and keep it fresh, and trying to keep providing as much insight as we can to the boxing public.